Hi everyone, this is Cloud Ranger's Microsoft Azure Training, the 2018 edition. As you know, I'm Sean Ismail, a Microsoft Azure MVP. My contact information is below along with the course information and asset sites as usual. So today is Module 1's continuation to Lesson 4, which is Managing Azure with Azure PowerShell. It's a very important lesson in the sense that people who have come from the previous training that I had before or had worked with Azure for a little while, they may remember that getting the Azure PowerShell set up was quite complicated before. I wouldn't say it was very complicated in the sense that it was hard. It just there was so many things to do, so many things that could go wrong. But now that has changed over the last year and a half. Things have become much easier as we got into the Azure Resource Manager or the ARM, uh, the ARM method of how Azure is going forward with. So I'm hoping that I'll cover most of the scenarios for getting started with this PowerShell. This has been, requested for a while that, hey, things have changed. Can you come up with a new session or a new lesson on how this is done right now? I've received a lot of emails over the last couple of years where people were stuck here and there and they wanted help on how to get this going. So I'm hoping that this is going to answer all of that and definitely set you up for the next lessons, which will be using PowerShell. And some of this stuff may be on your exam as well, right? So I'm following the curriculum, as you know, from the Azure's curriculum site. You can view the module 0 to actually see where everything is as usual. But the previous lesson was all about the portal, and today it's all going to be about Windows PowerShell. So let's get started. So Azure PowerShell. So some of you, well, most of you who's working with Windows right now know that Windows PowerShell itself has become so much more stronger. Microsoft is going towards a direction where everything is supported by Windows PowerShell, and it helps you script and it helps you automate, and that's the direction the industry is going towards, the DevOps, right? So the new 2016 Windows operating system has so much support for this. In fact, most of Microsoft products, including Microsoft Azure, actually has so much support for PowerShell. So we know Windows PowerShell is a scripting platform. If you have not been working with Windows PowerShell in your day-to-day job, if you're a Windows administrator, this is something you definitely need to get into. In general, learn how to script, how to code, and this will definitely help you support your career going forward. So something you should really be doing if you're not already doing it. So Windows PowerShell is a scripting platform. And from an Azure point of view, it has PowerShell modules for the Azure commandlets. So if you have been working with PowerShell, you know most of the products, they just go and just create the commandlets for the PowerShell platform. So Azure is no different. It just created the PowerShell modules, you put the PowerShell modules in, and you're good to go. Now, what will this allow you to do? So one thing we know with PowerShell scripts in general, it will help you automate IT processes with the scripts, right? If you are performing a certain task all the time, maybe you should just script it out so it's automated and you can reuse that. If you're using this in one environment, you can use the same script in multiple environments over and over to actually do this. And it helps a lot when you're doing especially labs, right? Just not only production, when you're learning something. If I'm going to go create a virtual machine every single time to go work on it and destroy it after the lab is done, maybe I should script it out, right? So the reusability of it will definitely help. The next thing is, and this is where DevOps comes to mind, is that it could be part of a larger deployment, right? So let's say your developers got this whole, this application all coded up and ready to ship and deploy. Maybe your part, what is getting the environment up and set up and everything, should be scripted as well because they will provide you the code. You put your script in there, you run the script, it takes their code, it takes their application, or whatever it is. I'm obviously simplifying this, but obviously it can take all of that and deploy it to your production environment or a test environment or whatever. This is the whole philosophy of DevOps, where developer and the operations, they come together and you create that one single pipeline for release management or deployment. So this is something you can definitely get into, and Azure PowerShell is no different. It can be part of larger deployments. I can give you one very industry, relevant experience, which is you have developers who are going to go test a piece of code. So you can write the entire uh, the entire infrastructure that you're going to build in Azure, which is infrastructure as code through Azure PowerShell. So as soon as the developer comes and says, hey, I need to go test this environment, this application, you can just run your code. It will build the entire environment for you in Azure, take the developer's code and put that in. In fact, you could actually provide them those codes so they don't even have to come to you. Every time they need to test something, they can go build their own environment. They can concentrate then just on their application, do everything else, and after that you just go and destroy that environment and it's good to go. Very cheap in very cheap in the context of building this environment up and running in a very short amount of time. And that's where the industry is going, right? That's why in general PowerShell is important and Azure PowerShell only is more important. So there are various PowerShell modules for Azure. Azure has PowerShell module for the Azure RM module, like I mentioned over here, which is the resource manager module, and this is where most of our time will be spent. But then there is for Azure Active Directory, there is identity and a lot of other modules, and we'll get into that in a little bit, once we start looking into it in more details. But Azure RM module is the one we'll be definitely concentrate on. So like I mentioned over here, the good thing is Azure PowerShell module has a browser. So you can actually, in general, go and look at PowerShell and all the modules it has. And Azure PowerShell definitely has, is a part of it. And we will go to that site right now. And I have the URL over there, and you'll have it in the URL list in GitHub. So if you go to this PowerShell module browser, by default, when you get to this site, you can see it's all packages and you can search for something. This is where, let's drop this down and you can see all the Azure PowerShell modules are listed over here. So like I mentioned, there's one for Active Directory, there's Identity, there's Elastic Database, Service Fabric. The one really we are interested in is the Azure RM or Azure Resource Manager PowerShell, right? And once you click on that, you can see it has multiple versions. We're obviously going to, use 5.3 because this is as the latest one. So let's go there. Once you go to that module, you can see all the commandlets that it supports is all listed. All the modules are over here within the RM module. So those are the sub modules. So there is one called compute. So if you're trying to do anything with virtual machines, it will use this sub module over here, Azure RM.compute. Once you click on that, this is where you can see all the commandlets that this supports. So let's say we are going to do something with virtual machine itself. So scroll down, 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 down. Snapshots, virtual machines. There you go. So this is where, let's say you are trying to get the properties of a virtual machine, and we'll be using this in a bit, get Azure RM VM. You can actually create one over here, and new Azure RM VM. This is how you will create a virtual machine. So let's click on one of this and see what happens. You can actually go and see the entire example of how it can be done. It actually gives you a very good example on, some very, common commandlets and common parameters. It actually shows you over here, easy to copy this as well. So if you want to get a virtual machine's information, so you just do get Azure RM VM. These are the parameters you put on there. What I'm trying to do over here is explain that it is so easy to go and discover what a specific module will do or a specific commandlet will do for you, get some examples to get it started. So if you're scripting something complicated and you want to find information, this is where you should be coming and finding information. I think it's a very intuitive tool, and it's it's really good. Microsoft has done a lot of work in building this information, so you can actually go and search for it. Definitely wasn't there a few years ago, but this is really good. Okay, so back to our slides. So that's the PowerShell module browser. You can go ahead, look at the module, you can go ahead, look at the sub modules, and you can see everything from here. The other thing I want to talk about is that Azure PowerShell is actually an open source project. So this might come across as a surprise to a lot of people from Microsoft world, but Microsoft actually does a lot of open source stuff these days, and PowerShell is one of that. And this is the GitHub location where you can see all the information about PowerShell. So let's take a quick look at that. So I'm in the GitHub location for Azure PowerShell. You can see this is all the contribution with source and everything else. As you can see, Microsoft is quite active in this realm. of things here. Some of the information about how to install Azure module and everything else is here. And you can actually find this from this location as well, but we'll be going through it momentarily. Okay. Okay, so now that we have looked at the GitHub and everything else, let's move on with the slides. So we talked about the module browser, we talked about the open source project, and now we are going to talk about the most important thing, that's why you are here, is how to get Azure PowerShell and get that installed. So there are multiple ways of doing this, depending on also which version of Windows or Linux you are or Mac OS. There's multiple ways of getting this, but I promise you this has become simpler. So there are, I listed a bunch of ones that I understand here. I saw this good 4 ways of doing it or 5 ways of doing it. The first one we are going to talk about, and this will probably be simple for most of you folks who are not on Windows 10, right? To use the web platform installer. So you can actually go to Azure's downloads section and you can download the web platform installer. This will get the latest version of PowerShell, which is 5.3 something as we have seen. And it will also take care of all the prerequisites. Okay, so that means if there is something that is missing for this to work, it will go and get that. So let's go to the website here. I already have opened up the location where the Azure downloads are. In this location, you can see there's a lot of things that you can download for Azure. The one that we are interested in is a scroll down, 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 is the command line tools. And you are looking for the PowerShell Windows install. Okay, so let's click on that. Basically, it goes and downloads this exe file. And once it's downloaded, you go click on that and the web platform installer version 5 will actually start installing. As you can see, the installer then goes and it knows that you are trying to get Azure PowerShell installed. So it's going and looking at the download size, the latest version 5.3. As you can see, this was very recently updated, February 13, 2018. And you go click on install and it will start installing. This should be most common way for you folks to do it if you're not on Windows 10. And I'll tell you why we are not going to do this in Windows 10. I mean, I'm on Windows 10 right now. I can very well do this because I want to show you some other examples on how this can be enabled in Windows 10 in a much simpler way, or complicated, how you look at it. But this installer should work for most of you people in other versions of Windows, Windows 7, 8, oh God, hopefully not Vista, but Windows 8 and whatever else you want to do. Okay, so I'm not going to go install it in this method. So if you want, go ahead, click install and get started and get that going, but I'm going to exit this. So that was the web platform installer way of doing it. Then the other one is the PowerShell Gallery. And this is the one I'm going to demonstrate completely to you today how it is done. With the PowerShell Gallery, and there is one of the modules that requires to be installed already on your system, which is the PowerShell Get module. So the reason I said that I was going to use this is because I'm on Windows 10 and Windows 10 already has the PowerShell Get module installed by default. That's because this PowerShell Get module or this method I'm going to use, it depends on the Windows Management Framework or WMP, uh, which is already there on Windows 10. Now, if you're on Windows 7, 8, or whatever, and you think that I'm still going to use the PowerShell Gallery one and not the web platform installer, you could go to the Windows Management Framework page link over here that I've showed. You can go over there. You can download the Windows Management Framework, and it will get that PowerShell Get module for you. I think it's the Framework 5 or something like that right now, 4.5 or 5, can't remember. But what it will do is then you can follow exactly what I'm going to do over here on Windows 10. This is if you do not have Windows 10, okay? And you're getting really, curious and you want to experiment with it, go for it. You probably should have this anyways because Windows Management Framework, I always like sticking to the latest tools of the trade. Even if you do this with web platform installer, uninstall that, try it out, go get the Windows Management Framework ready, get the PowerShell Get module, and you can then use the PowerShell Gallery to install the Azure PowerShell. Okay. The other thing is that for all other, like I mentioned, for all other additions to the Windows Management Framework, and that's the one I'm going to do in a bit. The third option is you can use the Windows installer package. So let's say you're not doing the web platform installer, you're not doing the PowerShell gallery. For some reason, you want to manually go get it from Windows installer package. You can get the MSI or Microsoft installer package from the GitHub website actually and get that going. Okay, and the way you'd go approach that is, let's go to the GitHub page over here, and if you scroll down, it shows you different way of doing it. Uh, you can see the web platform installer is over here. Download and install that from there. And I believe there's an MSI over here somewhere where you can actually go download that yourself manually and go do that. Let me look. Actually, you know what? Rather than looking for this, let me actually go to the releases directly. So releases, that should be the URL. Just add releases to the end. And you can see over here, version 5.3, they're still working on this. I mean, version 5.4. So we should go to 5.3. So look for 5.3. And this is where we are. So you can see PowerShell 5.3 MSI file over here. It's about 31 megs. So when you are running the web platform installer, it actually grabs it from here, the MSI file, and goes installs it for you. Web platform installer also makes sure the prerequisites and everything will be there. This may not necessarily do that because it doesn't know how else to pull all the other files, right? But whatever reason, if you need to, you can come over here as your PowerShell releases 5.3, and you can go get it from there if you have a requirement for it. Now, the most easiest way actually to do all of this, and this almost all goes out of the window, is using the Azure Cloud Shell on the Azure portal. I'll definitely give you a demonstration of that. There's pros and cons of using that. But you know what? I find that's the most easiest to go and do that. So I have already shown you Web Platform Installer. I'm going to show you the PowerShell Gallery one, and this one I'm not going to do, and the fourth one I'll definitely do. So technically, the third one is not the one I'm going to do because it's just a basic installer, and go do that. Okay, so let's go get this installed. Now, this is the PowerShell Gallery. So like I mentioned over here, this installation will be using the PowerShell Gallery to do that. And the way to do this is first you basically go and check if you have it already installed. So that's what the first commandlet is, that get module Azure RM list available, and see if you already have that. If you don't, then you go and install it. If you do already have that, you want to get the latest one, you just have run this commandlet, update module and Azure RM as the name for the parameter or the module name, and you can go and do this. Okay, so it's only really these two commandlets that you get you started in Windows 10. That's why I preferred this if you're on Windows 10. And if you're on other operating systems, if you have installed the management framework, you can exactly go and use these commandlets, and you should be okay as well. Now, when you go install through this method, all the modules that will be installed will be in program files, Windows PowerShell, and modules. Okay, it's something to remember, and I'll show you that in momentarily. When you are going to use the Windows platform installer and do that, the modules will be placed, I think, in a little different location. But for our purposes, this will be here. So let's go get started on this. I'm going to go. Actually, these are all the commandlets, and I'll have this already in GitHub for you folks. So you have all the scripts somewhere. These are the ones that were on the slide. So you don't have to refer to the slides to actually go do that. You can just copy and paste. That's exactly what I'm going to do. But the way to do this in Windows 10 is go run the Windows PowerShell, run it as an administrator. And let's clean this up and copy and paste. So the first thing what we are going to do is find out, check if Azure modules are installed and what version is installed. So let's go grab that. Copy and paste over here. Technically, I should see nothing. So right now, I have set up my system in such a way none of the Azure modules are there. And the other thing I'm going to do is see run, go to program files, and in program files, I'm going to show you the location. So Windows PowerShell modules, as you can see over here, there's really nothing that refers to Azure, okay? Let's leave it like that as well. So now that I actually have one more commandlet over here, that if you, for whatever reason, need to install the Azure module, you go run that. We're not going to run this because you most likely or ideally will not have a reason to go do that. I went and did this because I wanted to show you how to do this from scratch, right? So ignore that. Really, all you have to do technically in Windows 10, or if you have the Windows framework, management framework, the latest one in other versions, is run one commandlet and you're good to go. That's all really you should have to do. First, I checked. If you don't have it, this is the only one that will go and do the whole thing. So go run that. It takes a little bit of time to download everything and get everything in there. But once you run that, as you can see, it's going to say it's untrusted repository, but we know it's trusted. So go and click all. So I'll do yes to all and hit enter. It takes a little bit of time to initialize that and everything else, but look at the module over here. There's nothing appearing here, but as soon as it starts getting it, it will start appearing there, okay? So I'm going to wait over here, or actually, you know what? I'm going to pause a little bit and I'll unpause when it gets started. Okay, it took about good 30 seconds, but as you can see, it's connecting to the internet directly. And all the packages or the submodules, it's actually going and downloading them and installing them really, really quick. So if we go to modules right now, you can actually start seeing that it started download some of the Azure modules already. And it's all happening automatically for you. It's going and grabbing the module, submodules and putting it and installing the entire Azure RM module. So this thing will actually populate once, once all the modules are downloaded. So technically, we enabled Azure PowerShell with one commandlet, which is install module dash name Azure RM. Means you did not have to go to a website and download anything like we did in the, with the platform installer or the MSI file and all of that. And that's why I really, really like the way this one is set up. So if you want to do this, and I keep repeating myself, Windows 10, you're good to go. In other ones, go get the Windows Management Framework, follow the instructions on that page, and get this going. I think it's very, very easy. Okay, so let's see how far it's gone. Wow, it has populated quite a bit. I'm going to pause over here, let the whole thing happen, and come back once it's done. All right, it seems like it has got most of the module. I'm not seeing any activity over there. I think this has populated here quite a bit. It's still doing stuff in the back end, and it's been 2-3 minutes. Okay, there you go. It's just gonna, but it took good 2-3 minutes from the time we started, and it actually just goes and stays there a little bit. Like you mentioned, I pressed enter quite a bit to actually see if it was stuck or not, but it seems like it's done, and technically that should be it. We have all the modules. I don't know them by heart or anything. Don't think that I'm actually looking and figuring it out. But I'm glad to see that in the modules path, all this showed up means it did what it is supposed to do. And that's really it. So let's go clean the screen over here and run the same commandlet we had earlier and see what it shows right now. So when we run the get module, now you can see it's actually replying back with Azure RM 5.3, and it shows all the modules that are there. This means you now actually have the RM module all installed and loaded up. Okay, it went and loaded up the modules for you. Now, to test this out, what I have done is, let's see here. In here, in my Azure portal, let's go to resource groups. As you can see, I do have my test VM. So what I did is I created a virtual machine. It's a test VM just to go and test the PowerShell commandlets and see if it's actually working or not, right? So don't worry about this. If you really want to make a virtual machine, go check my previous lesson where I showed how to create a quick and dirty one just for testing purposes. So I'm going to try a module here, a commandlet here that I was talking about earlier when I was doing the browser, the module browser. It's get Azure RM resource manager. So anything you are doing at resource manager, in previous sessions in my previous training, most of them is to be get Azure, but it should be get Azure RM now with resource manager. And I'm going to type. I'm going to press the tab. As you can see, it goes through all the commandlets. Now, if you are going through all of them, you are going to go crazy, but it helps quite a bit when you are trying to remember something. But I remembered this commandlet. It's called get Azure RMVM. So if I press tab, as you can see, it actually showed up. I'm going to just run this little commandlet and see what happens. You'll see that it's actually going to come and fail. That means that once your Azure PowerShell modules have been installed, everything is ready for you, but look at the message here. No account found in context. Please log in with Connect Azure RM account. It's actually telling that yes, good, you have installed the PowerShell module, but excuse me, but you have not really gone and connected to any account. And this is no surprising. It's almost like going to the portal and not really logging in. And that's what we are going to discuss about. But if you see this message, you know what's going on there. So we have done the PowerShell installation. Now let's talk about the Azure PowerShell login and subscription access. You have gone, installed the Azure PowerShell modules. Everything is ready. You have seen the version. You have, done. I mean, you have downloaded, or it has downloaded for you from the gallery. How are you going to log into this subscription from the command line? That's what we are going to talk about. So there are two ways you can authenticate to the account. Okay, one is the Active Directory authentication, and the second one is the certificate-based authentication. The one we are going to talk about is Active Directory authentication. Do not worry about when I say Active Directory. If you are a regular sysadmin, you are like, whoa, 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 how is this connected to my Active Directory? It's actually not. This Active Directory authentication is through Azure. Okay, like I mentioned in my previous lessons, the first time you actually create an account in Azure, it actually creates an Azure Active Directory in the backend for you. Okay, do not worry about the details of this. We'll be doing a lot of that in when the time for that lesson comes in. But remember, there is an Azure Active Directory created for you every time you create a new account, and that's what we are going to do. This is going to be no different from the account that we have been using to get into, you know, in the portal. Like I used Sean at cloudranger.net. You'll probably be using something Hotmail or Live or Gmail or your organizational account. It doesn't matter. Use the same account you are using to get into your portal. Okay? Now, before going further with AD authentication, the certificate-based authentication, you may ask that what it is used for. Well, let's say you have an unattended script that needs to run. You don't want it to prompt to put in your username and password. You may want to use the certificate-based authentication. It's a little bit more involved. I have put a link over there if you want to go and use this. Basically, for the folks who understands this, it uses a service principal, means you create a little application in Azure which will validate that and use that account as a service principal and let you get through. Then you create or get yourself a certificate or do a self-signed certificate, and you put it in your directory or key store on the Windows machine. And what basically it will do is, as long as you have the thumbprint of that certificate in your script, it will go run unattended. So that means if you want to do stuff where you don't want to be putting in your credentials manually. So we're not going to get into details of that. We are going to use the AD authentication, and this is super simple as well. Like I'm saying, using AD authentication, the first thing you need to do is connect to your account, and you can use add Azure RM account. Like I showed that this is the commandlet I'm going to use. But if you can see over here, they're saying use connect Azure RM account. End of the day, they're the same commandlets. You can use either one. I don't mind use the connect Azure RM account because as you can see, it's asking us to do it. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I'll go and do add Azure RM account. It's the same. Okay, so let's go and do that. So we know we couldn't go and get anything. So we are going to connect, or we're going to get our account authenticated. So so that's just the one commandlet. As soon as you do that, this is what's gonna happen. It actually prompts you that, hey, that go put in your username and password. Very similar to how it asked for us in the portal. So go ahead and use the same credentials you're getting into your portal. By the way, if you are able to get into your portal, that means your account is working. If you're not already able to get into your portal, obviously this is not going to work, right? Because that means something is wrong with your account. So I'm going to use cloudranger.net. After this, for you, when you click next, it will probably ask you for the password. For me, it might be a little different. I'm going to use the personal account here, and it's asking for the password. Go ahead and put the same password in, and we are going to go sign in. Let's see what happens. All right. As soon as you sign in, it's actually telling you right now, hey, this is the account. This is your subscription name. This is your subscription ID. This is your tenant ID. Okay. Now, for you folks who are doing this for the first time, this is perfectly fine. You're good to go from here. If you're doing this in an organization or if you have multiple accounts and subscriptions, make sure that you understand what's going on here. It's very important that you connect to the right subscription. Otherwise, things might mess up. The newer folks, I say everything's okay for you because you probably have never been to one of the subscriptions before, and it's okay for you. So the way you can do that is you can first of all see the subscription name and subscription ID. If you remember in my previous lessons, I went and said, go to subscriptions here. The subscription that you're going to use is this one. So let's click on that. And you can see the subscription and subscription ID. So the last one is C619. So I can see C619. I can validate that for sure I'm connected to my test subscription. I have access to many, many subscriptions for different reasons, for work, personal use, and everything else. But this is the only subscription I use for my test work. I'm validating I'm in the right place. Make sure you do that, okay? Make sure you validate that and you understand that. So if we go over here and pass a commandlet to delete something, you know, um, you're not going and deleting some production stuff on your company's subscription or some other company's subscription. That's what I'm trying to prevent here, okay? So the first time you do add Azure RM account, or you can use connect Azure RM account, the same experience, it will bring you over here. If for some reason you have lost this, let's say that, and you want to go validate before putting in a very let's say you're going and deleting a bunch of stuff and you're like, hey, I want to absolutely make sure that I'm in the right subscription. There's another commandlet that will show you all that information, and that is the get Azure RM context. Okay, so to see the same information we were seeing earlier, TE, press tab, it should bring it. Okay, it will give you the same information. Okay, in a little different format. This is the same username I was using, or the account ID that I was using. C619, this is actually the subscription ID. It doesn't tell you this is the subscription ID, but if you remember C619, that was for me. That's the right one. And your one will be different, right? I mean, your subscription ID is completely going to be different. And I also look at the subscription name. Mine is the Visual Enterprise, Studio Enterprise with MSDN. That's the one, okay? So now, if we go and run this commandlet, get Azure RMVM, we know that in my subscription, there is a virtual machine, and this should reply properly right now. Press tab, make sure the commandlet is correct. Let's press enter. All right, now you see it's actually connecting to my subscription. Well, it is connected to my subscription, and it's showing the virtual machine that I have. One simple commandlet means everything is working, correct? Good. So that's what I wanted to talk about over here was the login and the subscription access. We have logged in, we have the right subscription. All right, so I'm not going to get into more deep commandlets and everything. As we do the other lessons, we will be definitely learning more about this. We'll be, having simple commandlets, or we're going to have larger scripts that we're going to run, and we're going to get some things going. Now, let's actually go back to our slide and find out what else do we need to cover. So we went and did the web platform installer. I just showed you how to do this in the PowerShell Gallery. I'm not going to do the MSI. Let's go and explore the easiest one, which is the Azure Cloud Shell on Azure portal. This is a brand new thing. It's brand new and shiny, and I love it. So if you go to your portal, go to your dashboard, there's nothing over here. You recall in my previous lessons, I actually showed you this little thing over here. It's called Cloud Shell. Okay, let's go and click on that. If you click on that, as you can see, the very first time you go and click on that, it will say, welcome to Cloud Shell. Which one do you want? Do you want the bash, which is a shell on Linux, or you want the PowerShell Windows? I'm going to go and say PowerShell Windows. The first time it's going to ask you is that you do not have any storage account mounted for this. What happens is in the backend, when you create this shell, it uses your existing Azure subscription to create a storage account and put some profile data. Okay, that's what it's really trying to do. So it's saying that you have no storage mounted, create storage. Go ahead and create the storage. You can go to advanced settings, means end of the day, if you recall what I mentioned is that everything that happens in Azure, it will happen in a resource group. So when I first went there, you remember I had my test VM. Look at this. It's actually creating a resource group for you in the backend called Cloud Shell Storage East US. Okay, so it's going and doing all of that for you. And this is the very first time. I mean, the very first time you go do this, it goes and sets it up. As you can see, it went and got your subscription ID. This is the resource group it created. This is the storage account it's created. It's creating a file share for you. And it's saying that, initializing your account, PowerShell may take up to a minute. It does take up to a minute. What it does is it initializes everything for you, creates the profile, and does everything for you in the backend. The next time you click on this, obviously, these all things are created for you, and it will come up right away. But I love this. Think about it. You're doing nothing here. You just clicked on that button, said that go get this started for me, and the next time you come over here, the PowerShell is ready for you. So as you can see, it's saying PowerShell may take up to a minute. It's already succeeded. It's actually now connecting to the terminal. Love this. I think this is the easiest to do it. So if you're doing some operational work like I was doing, go check a VM, go create something fast and easy, you can go do that. Maybe for larger scripts, this is not the best way to do that. But again, nothing stops you from taking that script, uploading it to your storage account, and running it from here. So be creative. Obviously, there are multiple methods for you to do this. If you fail in every other way today that I showed you, web platform installer, PowerShell Gallery, whatever, just come here and trust me, this is going to work for you. So, okay. Um, it's welcome to Azure PowerShell. As you see, it's still in preview. It's authenticating to Azure. There's a little thing you can do up in here to actually make this, give you a little bit more real estate. I like it, keep it somewhere around here because it allows me to, work on my shell and everything else over here on the portal as well as the shell. So let's scroll up a little bit here. Let's pull this up a little bit. As you can see, you are now at a prompt. Okay, it's already connected for you. Like how I did it from my home computer, where I actually had to go and do that, connect or add Azure RM account. You don't have to do that over here. Since it's integrated within your portal, it's done the whole thing for you. So technically, I could go over here and type the commandlet we have been using, which is get Azure RM VM. Press tab. Takes a little bit of time for doing the tab thing over here, but oops, it went and did that. Let's press enter. Voila. As you can see, it went and got everything for me. The virtual machine is here. Interesting thing, make it full screen. So you have all the space over here and you can do more work. The other one we were using was get Azure RM context, I believe. Oops, context. Let's go and see context. See, it's giving the same information. And it's all ready for you. Okay. If you are now thinking that, okay, I don't want this full screen, I'm going to minimize this and do some work, you can actually keep it here. Just minimize it and go to do the work here, or you can minimize from here and you can go work on your portal, click on this again, and it will show up exactly where you left it. Okay. So let's clear the screen. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about over here is if you go and close it, no problem. Just go over here, click on it again, and the next time you click on this, since it's already installed, it succeeded, means PowerShell is all ready for you. It's just connecting to the terminal and it's authenticating to Azure. This is where it's actually taking your portal information, going to the shell and doing everything again, and boom, few seconds, less than I think 10 or 15 seconds, you're ready. Get Azure RMVM. Oops. If I can spell properly, RMVM, and you're ready to go. I think this is the most easiest way to actually get to Azure PowerShell. We'll be talking about the bash shell later or the CLI in the next lesson, but this is really, really good. Okay. I'm almost thinking, so at this point, the lesson is done. I think I've showed you most of the ways to get PowerShell on your Windows system or go from your portal and do everything for there. This is not part of my slide. I mean, at this point, I think we can pretty much conclude this, but I'm going to show you one bonus way of doing this, okay? For some people, this may sound a little work, but for some people, this should be all right. How to get Windows PowerShell running from your Linux system. So if you're one of those folks who is using Linux, can you use Windows PowerShell to, Azure PowerShell to actually do Azure work? Absolutely. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do this. This is totally bonus for you folks who are thinking that, hey, I'm okay for today. You can move on, but I'm going to show it for people who want to stick around and do this. Okay, let's close this. Close this. In the commandlets that you'll find from GitHub, I actually have the commandlets that you need or the stuff that you need to do on at least a Ubuntu machine on how to go do that. Okay. Let me pause the video and show you the website I actually took this from. Okay, it's a Microsoft documentation website, and I'll show you in a moment. Okay, I actually made this easy and put it in the important links text file. So I hope you guys go to my GitHub site. I keep bringing that up on my slides. I think I did over here somewhere. Like, this is the GitHub site where I put all the important links that we talk about, and I put also the commandlets and everything, right? So you don't have to go search for it by yourself. So in here, I put a location which says that install PowerShell on Linux, and you can see all the links that we have talked about today. They're all in here. Okay, so I'm going to go grab this link, and this actually shows you how to go do this in Linux. So this is a Microsoft document, as you can see, installing PowerShell core on Mac OS on Linux. So if you're also on Mac, this will help you quite a bit. So they're showing you how to do this in Ubuntu 14.04, 16.04. I'm going to actually show you how to do this on Ubuntu 16.04. If you're not using Ubuntu and you're using Debian or Red Hat or CentOS, they're showing you all the command letters that you need to do over there. Okay, so I just wanted to show you how to enable first the PowerShell on there. Once PowerShell is there, we know how to do the Azure PowerShell, right? So this is where it gets actually more interesting. If you have an Ubuntu box or a Linux box, go ahead and get started, okay? Follow this instructions that I'm providing and you're good to go. If you are on Windows 10, if you recall, in Windows 10, it actually has an integrated bash shell for you, okay? And it uses Ubuntu in the backend. So I'm actually not even going to go to a Linux box. If you have one, go ahead and get started. I'm actually just going to go to my bash shell, bash on Ubuntu, which is there for you from Windows 10, and I'm going to just run that as an administrator. Okay. And as you can see, it brings to the root over here, and you can do a bunch of stuff over here. Let's go to lsb release-a just to show what version I'm running. I'm running Ubuntu 16.04. That's the one that comes with Windows 10, okay? So it's not like I went and installed that. I think you can also have Fedora as a shell. You can also have, there's another shell that is there, but I use Bash. It's the most popular. It uses Ubuntu. Like I mentioned, I'm just using this for demonstration purposes because Windows 10 comes with this shell. If you have a Linux box, go to it from there. Okay, obviously CLS is not going to work on Linux. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you need to do is get the GPG keys here. So I'm going to run the curl command to go get it from Microsoft. Okay, it's going to run, download it, and get it going. Once that is done, I need to register the Microsoft Ubuntu repository, right? I mean, this does not come default. This repo does not come default with Debian, with Ubuntu anyways. So I'm going to go add that. Okay, let's go and do that. So Xenial, okay, it's added. Now I'm going to go run the apt. So this is basically using the apt, right? Because I'm on Ubuntu, it could be yum or npm, whatever you are using. I'm going to go and update that, just making sure that it goes grabs all those packages from Microsoft's repo that we have added. And right after that, once that update is complete, all we are going to do is we are going to go do apt get install PowerShell, okay? Because now we know that package is already there. So I'm going to copy this, come over here, let this finish. It's finished. Let's go and do PowerShell. Your update might actually take long. I ran an update earlier, so that means that it just went and added this Azure's packages. But at this point, we are basically going saying, go install PowerShell. And it should go install PowerShell for you. It takes a couple of minutes. I'm going to pause here, come back once this installation is done. And once this is installed, all we are going to do is run, the PowerShell. It's PWSH for Ubuntu, and I'm going to run it as sudo because we are trying to go do something there. So let me pause. while this installation continues, I want to repeat myself once again that if you already have a Linux box somewhere, I mean, you can just do it from there. You don't have to do this in Windows 10 Bash shell or anything like that. I'm definitely being lazy here, but at the same time, I'm also showing you the power of Windows 10, where you have a built-in Bash shell. Um, you know, if you have Windows 10, you may not be able to see the bash shell directly. There's a method of going and enabling it. You need to actually go to Windows Store. Actually, this reminds me, maybe I should show you that, how to go and do that. Um, some of you will be curious. Microsoft Store, and you go over here and type bash. It should go grab it for you. Run Linux on Windows, you do over there. You can see there is Ubuntu open, Linux Enterprise, and everything else. These are the three ones. I went and basically installed this one. It's free. You can click on that and get it started, okay? That's how you get it. All right, so this has installed. Let's go get started. So we are going to go, I'm going to run it with sudo pwsh, like any other sh or shell in Linux, right? So sudo pwsh. As you can see, the PowerShell will start showing up here. Initializing a little bit. By the way this is working, if you guys are curious, .NET framework, or right now .NET Core, is a framework that Microsoft is now using, which is, which can be used in any platform. This is actually using .NET Core in the backend. That's why it's working in Linux. If you're just curious that how PowerShell started all of a sudden working in Linux world. All right. So now that we have the PowerShell here, maybe we should run this commandlet and find out that if we have the Azure module there or not. So get Azure module. This will be no different. Now that we have PowerShell, these commandlets and everything should be no different. As you can see, it's not there, and I'm not expecting it to be there. So we know how to go and do this. In our Windows PowerShell, we went and did install module named Azure RM. In Linux, we are going to do install module Azure RM .NET Core, right? I mean, these are the modules that will come up there. So let's try this with Azure RM. Let me show you first this. As you can see, it went and it's giving a similar prompt that, do you really want to go install these modules? You know what? I'm going to say no, and I'm going to get out of there. Okay. I'm not sure actually if this will go and get the modules, and these modules are written the same way that works on Windows on Linux or not. It's going to the PowerShell gallery, because end of the day this is a PowerShell, so it's actually going connecting to the PowerShell gallery and it's getting whatever it wants. So I'm going to actually go and install the module that is Windows Azure RM Net Core. Okay, let me go grab that. If you went and did the entire Azure RM, it will get everything that Windows Azure gets you by default, but I'm going to use just the Net Core one because I know the .NET Core one is going to work for Linux for most of the work that I'm doing. So go to A and let it go and install. So in the end, this is going to be a similar approach to how it was happening in Windows, but now we are doing this in Linux using PowerShell. Yeah, rather than making you guys wait over here, I'm going to go pause. As you can see here, it's getting all the packages for .NET Core, right? Azure RM Resource .NET Core. So everything is going to use the .NET Core because that's meant for the Linux version. It's using the .NET Core's platform in the backend, or the framework in the backend. It's amazing. Think about it. How far things have come, right? I mean, you are using Windows PowerShell and using the Azure PowerShell modules in Linux. So if you're actually using that for some scripting or some other environment in the backend, you're pretty much good to go even from Linux side of things. Microsoft has been very open-minded on this lately. So once this is done, I'm going to go get import module Azure RM Net Core. So let's go and import the module, and you're good to go. So far, the only thing we did different was that we used the install module, which was different from the other one. But now let's go back. What do we know? if we go and run the Azure commandlet over here, it's not going to work because we have to connect, right? So, now that we have done all of that, let's go create, connect the account, add Azure RM account. Okay. So if you recall, when we were doing this in Windows PowerShell, in the Windows PowerShell console, we had the GUI open up with the browser and everything. Microsoft here is assuming that you cannot do that on a Linux shell, right? And obviously you can't. It's not going to work how it goes and works in Windows. So how does it authenticate you and find out how to get in there from a shell? It's basically telling you, go to the browser and open this link. So we're going to go to browser, copy and paste that link. Oops, I don't think I copied it properly. This and press enter. Okay, let's go do that. It's a very unique way of logging you in a Linux shell. It's basically asking, give me that code. So let's go get that code to authenticate. Once you put that code in, and it's saying that, hey, is this the Windows Azure PowerShell that you're coming off? Say, yep. Now it's asking you properly from the browser, go and log in. Okay, you have signed into Windows Azure PowerShell application. Means if you come over here, as you can see, it went and got our information. And you can close this thing over here and you are good to go. All right, now we know that I do have a virtual machine. Let's go and run that same commandlet, Azure RM VM, right? If you press tab, you again have autocompletion that works here. I should get my virtual machine. There you go. Guys, so what happened here? I'm using a Windows box to run a bash shell. In there, I went and installed Windows PowerShell and then the Azure RM modules, and I'm going and doing my work from there. Man, this is like Inception. Remember that movie, like a dream in a dream in a dream? Can you imagine I now go over here on this shell and create a Linux box and SSH into that? It's insane. But I'm just showing you that this is how far things have come, okay? So if you want to use PowerShell on a Mac or Windows or Linux, it does not matter. Go and try it from anywhere. Any Azure commandlet that we have been using elsewhere, like most of them will be working here. Microsoft is actually, building this up every day and making sure that it's supported in other platforms. I actually want to go and run this command once again. Get module and find out which RM module that was there. Let's go and see list available. It's not showing. Yep, I figured out what it was not working because we haven't installed the get module Azure RM. We used the .NET Core, right? So what I did, I'll show you on the commandlet here, is I went and put that star or asterisk here, saying that go get anything with Azure RM. What I'm trying to show you over here is look at this. These are all the modules that it has installed. It's not as crazy and as big as as many as we had in Windows, but this has most of the important ones. It has compute for virtual machine, network, storage, websites, Key Vault, and it's only version 1.0, version .10, right? It's not even full version 1. Means Microsoft is working on this more and more to provide the entire support of all the PowerShell commandlets that you can use even on Windows that will come into Linux. But for most purposes, this is going to work for you. Okay, that's what I'm really going to show you. If you are on a Linux box, yeah, you're not doing the Inception thing, but you should be able to get the same thing as well. Okay, I think this session went more than I expected, but I think the Linux on Windows and showing you PowerShell from there, or for you Linux folks out there, was kind of a bonus. And I wanted you guys to be supported wherever you're working from. So that kind of concludes this session. All right, so guys, as usual, the training site is located at cloudranger.net. You are viewing this on YouTube. Slides will be posted on slideshare.net. That's the Twitter. Don't forget to go to the GitHub. I post all the important links and all the PowerShell scripts or commandlets I use there. This was something I was not doing before, and people were sending me tons of emails and, hey, what are the scripts you use? I'm going to put them on GitHub. And that's the LinkedIn location where you can follow. All right, guys, so thanks for viewing. Please do like the videos. If you like them, if you think this is important for the, I mean, it's been great for you and it's helping you out in your exam or even your work, go like the videos and subscribe to the channel so you find out when newer videos are coming out and I'm covering new lessons. Now I'm going to go uh, work on the next lesson for you guys. All right. Thanks, everyone.